1997 Constitution, as amended, and orders 86 of our standing orders, the Honorable Minister for Finance and Economic Affairs tabled the estimates of revenue and expenditure of the Gambia for the fiscal year 2026, that is from 1st January to 31st December 2026, both days inclusive, on the 31st of December 2025. Accordingly, and pursuant to Section 152, sub 1A of the 1997 Constitution, as amended, and Order 86 of our standing orders, the National Assembly considered and approved the said 2026 estimates with amendments on Tuesday, 25th November 2025. Therefore, in pursuance of Section 152(3) of the Constitution and Order 87(2) of the Standing Orders, the Honorable Minister for Finance and Economic Affairs shall today introduce the Appropriation Bill 2026 under a certificate of urgency for consideration and enactment by this August Assembly. Accordingly, at the appropriate time, I will cause a vote to be taken without debate on the certificate of urgency for the appropriation bill to be introduced as certified by His Excellency the President in accordance with both Section 101 of the Constitution and Order 77(2) of the Standing Orders. Honorable members, as per Order 87 sub 4 of the Standing Orders, the Honorable Minister will set out any amendments made to the estimates, present and outline government's fiscal policies and program for the year 2026, commonly referred to as the budget speech. Consequently, honorable members, the Honorable Minister for Finance and Economic Affairs will proceed to table the Appropriation Bill 2026 before us today. I thank you for your attention, and clerk, may we proceed.
Bill, Appropriation Bill 2026, first reading by the Honorable Minister for Finance and Economic Affairs.
Honorable members, as indicated earlier, I will now put the question without debate for the acceptance or otherwise of the certificate of urgency on the said bill. Be resolved that this Assembly do accept the bill entitled Appropriation Bill 2026 be proceeded with under a certificate of urgency. Those in favor, please say aye. Those not in favor, please say no. The ayes have it. I had only a lone voice. Pardon?
I said the no voice wants division.
Members, those not in favor of the motion, raise your tag. Those in favor, raise your tags. Abstentions, please raise your tags. Who is calling? Are you calling my attention? Honorable Member for Lower Fuladu, are you calling my attention? Honorable members, the results of the votes. Those in favor, 29. Those against, 01. 1. Abstention, 0. The ayes have it. Honorable members, I now invite the Honorable Minister for Finance and Economic Affairs to take the podium and table his bill. Honorable Minister.
Yes.
Minister. Law Fladu, yes? What are you up to? Oh. Honorable Minister, you can proceed.
Good morning, Honorable Speakers, and Your Excellency, the Vice President and colleague ministers, dignitaries here present, all other protocols, jury, and respectively observed. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the bill entitled An Act to Provide for the Services of the Government of the Gambia for the period 1st of January 2026 to 31st of December 2026, both days inclusive, be read a second time. Yeah. Yes. It's okay. It's okay. Yes. Honorable Speaker, the government of the Gambia, under the leadership of His Excellency, the President Adama Barrow, remain committed to advancing public financial management reforms aimed at improving service delivery to the Gambian people. This is evident in the 2024 annual progress review of the Recovery Focused National Development Plan, commonly dubbed as YIRIWA. The review highlighted significant progress in macroeconomic management, infrastructure development, increased access to electricity, and establishment of schools outside a 2-kilometer radius of existing ones. The global economy is characterized by increased fragmentation and protectionism. Consequently, growth is forecasted to slow from 3.3% in 2024 to 3.2% in 2025, and further to 3.1% in 2026. On the domestic front, economic performance has gained momentum. Real GDP is estimated at 5.9% in 2025 compared to 5.6% in 2024. This is supported by macroeconomic stability, enhanced agricultural productivity, government commitment to close the infrastructure deficit, growth in tourism arrivals, and robust inflow of remittances. These compare favorably to the sub-Saharan African average of 3.9% in 2024, and 4% in 2025, and 4.2% in 2026. The sustained tight monetary policy rate of 17% since August 2023 by the Central Bank of the Gambia, and improved domestic supply conditions have successfully .4% in September 2025 and declined further to 7% as of October 2025. The rate of the depreciation of the dollar has slowed down in 2025 compared to a year ago. In the first 9 months of 2025, it has narrowed to 5.2% for the US dollar, 10% for the euro, and 9.7% for the CFA, compared to the same period last year, in which 10.5%, 15.5%, and 11.1% was recorded for the US dollar, euro, and CFA, respectively. His Excellency Adama Barrow, the President, is championing the implementation of domestic resource mobilization reforms to foster sustainable growth, promote economic diversification, and enhancing resilience against external shocks as the country moves towards the 2026 and beyond. Revenue performance has been robust over the years, with tax revenue exceeding target. Resultantly, tax to GDP is estimated to increase to 12% in 2025 and is projected to reach 13.2% in 2026. This expected improvement is due to the ongoing and planned reform measures being implemented by the government. However, it remains below the OECD and Sub-Saharan African average of 34% and 16% in 2024, respectively. In the medium term, domestic resource mobilization target is to reach the Sub-Saharan African average. On the public expenditure, despite fiscal pressures, the government has completed construction of phase 1 and 2 of the OIC road with 35% domestic funding. The Kiang West, which is 87 kilometers, Nyomi Hakalang, 85 kilometers, are completed, and the ongoing Kabada road of 102 kilometers roads are fully funded from domestic resources. In addition, the government has embarked on the construction of key priority roads network with total length of 365 kilometers. To boost the agricultural productivity and reduce input costs for farmers, government has provided considerable subsidies to crop financing and fertilizer purchase, amounting to 900 million, as well as high-yielding seeds at no cost to farmers. To strengthen the financial position of the National Food Security Services Processing and Marketing Company, the government has provided them with 300 million as equity investment in the next year. The government has subsidized the electricity sector to the tune of 1.3 billion in 2024 and allocated 1 billion in 2025 and 2026 budgets. And currently, the arrears of car power have been fully paid by the government in collaboration with partners. In 2026, the government will continue to support various life-changing programs and projects despite fiscal constraints. The overall fiscal deficit in the 2026 budget is projected to narrow to 1% of the GDP compared to 1.3% in 2025. This fiscal consolidation is intended to reduce the borrowing needs of the government, to ensure debt sustainability, and to ease access to private sector credit. In the face of the global economic uncertainties, the theme of the 2026 budget is improving the well-being and the quality of life of Gambians. This guides our 3 core objectives: to sustain macroeconomic stability through prudent policies and to deepen structural reforms for a resilient economy, and to strengthen the public financial management for the efficient use of our national resources. Hence, the investment in human capital sectors such as health, education, and agriculture amount to 18.6 billion, representing 35% of the total budget, representing the highest allocation to these sectors. Macroeconomic overview. Honorable Speaker, developments in the global economy, despite the tariff shocks being less severe than initially anticipated, uncertainty regarding the stability and direction of the global economy has intensified. As a result, global growth is forecasted to slow from 3.3% in 2024 to 3.2% in 2025 and further to 3.1% in 2026. The slowdown reflects uncertainties ranging from cuts to development aid and increased fragmentation and protectionism. Growth in advanced economies is projected to be 1.6% in 2025 and 2026, in line with the United States slowing to 2% in 2025 and gain slightly 2.1% in 2026. The weak growth is on account of policy uncertainties, higher trade barriers, and lower growth in both the labor force and employment. In sub-Saharan Africa, growth is expected to remain unchanged in 2025 from 4.1% in 2024 and is expected to pick up to 4.4% in 2026. The global inflation is expected to decline to 4.2% in 2025 and to 3.7% in 2026, with notable variation across regions and countries. The global outlook is faced with prolonged uncertainty, more protectionism, and labor supply shocks, fiscal vulnerabilities, potential financial market corrections, and the erosion of institutions could threaten stability. Developments in the domestic economy. Honorable Speaker, the recovery process in the domestic economy continues to gain momentum. Consequently, the real GDP is expected to grow to 5.9% in 2025, following a preliminary projections of 5.6% in 2024. This will be supported by slower inflation, a stable exchange rate, booming construction activities, enhanced agricultural productivity, ongoing growth in tourism arrivals, and robust remittance inflows. And partners. Similarly, growth in the livestock subsector, fishing, and agriculture are estimated to be resilient. While the forestry and the logging subsector is expected to register a modest growth due to policy position on the ban of timber export. Overall, agriculture sector is expected to grow by 5.1% in 2025. Growth of the industrial sector is estimated to reach 6% in 2025 compared to 5.3% recorded in 2024. This is being supported by government's commitment to close the infrastructure deficit and robust inflows of remittances. On the electricity, the gradual increase in domestic generation and the operationalization of the 225 kilowatt our transmission line and import diversifications have improved supply side. The mining and manufacturing subsectors are estimated to sustain the growth on account of increased construction activities and local demand. The service sector is estimated to expand by 6% in 2025. This is supported by the initiatives from the Gambia Tourism Board and other sector players. Wholesale and retail trade is being driven by rising consumer spending following the stabilization of prices and increased diaspora remittances. Transport sector is benefiting from the robust infrastructure stand by the central bank, has triggered moderation in inflation pressures. Inflation has been consistently declining in the first 6 months. However, an uptick was witnessed in July and August. As of end September 2025, a decline was observed and is expected to remain on a downward trend by the year end. Exchange rate stability has been restored, supported by forex policy introduced in 2023, increased tourist receipts, and steady inflows of private remittances. The continued implementation of the domestic resource mobilization reforms is bearing fruits. Domestic revenue collection for the first 9 months of 2025 amounted to 28.8 billion against a target of 22 billion. Relative to the same period in 2024, domestic revenue recorded a growth of 22%. Tax collection exceeded target by 15% as of end of September 2025, while non-tax underperformed. Grant disbursements are on track. Overall, the revenue and grants outturn is anticipated to be on target. And we are pleased to inform that the GRA has outperformed their current year performance, and they have met their annual target as of end of November. On the spending side, the implementation of the 2025 budget faced pressures related to the 2024 outstanding commitments of about $690 million, which were carried over to 2025 on budgeted transfers linked to earmarked revenues of about $1.6 billion and contingent liabilities from the state-owned enterprises. Total expenditure for the first 9 months of 2025 stood at $36.3 billion, representing an execution rate of 103% against target. However, due to reprioritization, overall expenditure is expected to be within budget by the year end. Because of the higher expenditure pressures and underperforming non-tax revenues, the overall deficit, including grants, amounted to $7 billion during the first 9 months of 2025. The budget deficit is projected to narrow towards the target due to expected disbursement in budget support at the end of the year. On the public debt, the debt stock remains high but sustainable, with a total debt of $110 billion in 2023, which increased to $29 billion in 2024. This is attributable to exchange rate depreciation and additional stock accumulation of the debt. Measures to achieve debt sustainability will include the following: borrowing at highly concessional terms, reduction of the fiscal deficit, and an annual borrowing plan. Key sectors: finance and economic affairs. Honorable Speaker, the government of the Gambia, in collaboration with the IMF, completed the 4th review of the Gambia's extended credit facility and the 1st review of the resilient and sustainability facility. The performance under the ongoing ECF and RSF has been strong, reflecting the government's adherence to improving macro-fiscal management and implementation of reforms. On June 18, 2025, the World Bank published the outcome of the country policy and either eligible country policies and institutional framework for fostering poverty reduction and sustainable growth, and provides an indication of the ability to use development assistance effectively. The overall score of the 2024 CPIA for the Gambia is 3.2%. These represent an improvement from the CPI rating of 3.1% in 2023. The score not only surpasses the sub-Saharan African average of 3.1, but the highest in the country's history since the start of the exercise. This performance indicates the current administration's effort in institutional reform, economic management, social protection, human capital development, and investment in infrastructure. These investments have leapfrogged the country's development agenda. In addition, the higher score implies access to more resources from World Bank and African Development Banks, respectively. The government of the Gambia has shown notable improvement in the fight against corruption and improved transparency. In 2024, the Corruption Perception Index, CPI, published by the Transparency International, indicated a score of 38, and the score in 2016 was 26, and the highest in the last 10 years. This compares favorably to the sub-Saharan African average of 33. This has led the Gambia's ranking to improve to 96 out of 180 countries in 2024, from a ranking of 145 in 2016. These improvements were as a result of digitalization of public services, procurement reforms, implementation of governance, diagnostic roadmap, and the ongoing anti-corruption reforms. The ministry is expanding the program-based budgeting pilot from 5 ministries to 15 ministries, departments, and agencies. This strategic shift is designed to tighten the alignment of the MDA programs with the recovery-focused National Development Plan. This will ensure that the MDAs are focused on outputs rather than inputs, enhance effectiveness of public spending, and ensure that they directly serve our national priorities. Government has developed a medium-term roadmap to mainstream gender-responsive budgeting. This initiative will integrate gender analysis into policy and budgetary decisions to address inequalities and advance gender equality. In the Gambia, the demand for infrastructure remains high amid limited fiscal space. To address this, the government of the Gambia continues to promote PPPs, that is public-private partnerships, as a strategic approach to mobilize private sector resources, expertise, and innovation in complementing public investments. In this regard, the government of the Gambia made progress in advancing the national PPP bill. Once it comes into force, the PPP Act, together with the draft PPP operational guidelines, will provide a comprehensive legal and institutional framework to boost investor confidence, ensure transparency, and enhance private sector participation in national development. Productive sectors, agriculture. The Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Food Security, with support from partners, continue to drive its transformation agenda, guided by the recovery-focused National Development Plan, 2023 to 2027. The sector saw a 6% increase in the cultivated land, totaling 179,663 hectares, with cereal cultivation rising by 8% and rice by 4%. Challenges remain, particularly in seed quality, as 85% of the seeds used are sourced from farmer stores, often of lower quality. However, initiatives are underway to improve seed quality, fertilizer accessibility, which are essential to enhancing productivity and resilience in the sector. With regards to the livestock sector, the population of goats have increased from 435,709,000 in 2024 to 451,394 in 2025. Sheep has increased from 181 to 182,000 respectively. The decrease in the population for cattle is attributable to limited coverage of the vaccination against the contagious bovine pleuropneumonia and the pressure on grazing land resulting to cattle moving to southern Senegal. Looking ahead to 2026, the ministry aims to further enhance agricultural productivity through the continued transformation agenda. Plans include increasing access to quality seeds and fertilizers, expanding infrastructure for post-harvest management, and bolstering support for gender-inclusive initiatives in agriculture. Additionally, ongoing collaboration with development partners will be crucial for achieving these goals and ensuring that agriculture remains a pillar of the Gambian economy, which employs a significant proportion of the population. Fisheries and water resources. The fisheries sector remains a strategic pillar of the Gambian government's development agenda, with enormous potential to contribute significantly to the national socio-economic transformation. In this regard, the ministry distributed 20 fishing boats and related accessories to 6 coastal and 7 inland fishing communities. These interventions aimed at promoting youth participation, increasing fish availability, and reducing rural unemployment and curbing irregular migration. The focus on the aquaculture has been intensified to serve as a climate-smart alternative to reduce pressures on capture fisheries. Resultantly, the ministry acquired a fish feed extruder for the Department of Fisheries, rehabilitated 58 fish ponds, a hatchery, and constructed a 4-chamber aquaculture pond, stocked with 4,000 fingerlings and equipped with a fish feed mill machine. For water resources, 68 solar-powered pipe supply systems were constructed and installed to serve to improve fish landings and targeting public-private partnership to expand agriculture and inland fisheries. Increase investment in research, surveillance, and enforcement mechanisms, and accelerate the implementation for licensing will also be done. The ministry is also prioritizing the scaling up of investment in rural water and sanitation infrastructure and accelerating the implementation of reforms to manage the nation's water resources in line with the integrated water resources management principles. Communication and digital economy. The ministry continues to play a pivotal role towards inclusive socio-economic transformation. In this regard, the ministry has finalized a number of policy documents to strengthen policy, legal, and regulatory frameworks. These include Digital Government Policy and Roadmap 2025 to 2035, the National Data Policy, the Digital Startup Policy, the Draft Postal and Courier Service Policy as well. To prepare for the era of artificial intelligence, the Ministry of Mugdi has initiated the formulation of the National AI and Emerging Technologies Policy and Strategy. These will promote ethical, effective use of AI across all sectors. In 2026, the ministry will prioritize the integration and interoperability challenges in the payment space. Strengthen national connectivity by rolling out of a second subsea fiber optic cable. The ministry will spearhead the development of an enterprise architecture framework to ensure interoperability of government systems and rolling out MyGov. On cybersecurity and cybercrime prevention, the Government Security Operations Center, which is currently under establishment, is expected to provide robust support for cybercrime management. Tourism and culture. The ministry has actively participated in 6 major international expos, host heritage-focused tours, fostering academic and cultural exchange while continuing collaboration with prominent Gambians on the global stage to promote the Destination Gambia. The sector has successfully hosted the inaugural international conference with National Association of Nigerian Travel Agencies and partnered with ValueJet to launch direct flights from Nigeria in May 2025. On arts and culture, the sector completed the refurbishment of Fort Bullen Site Museum, rehabilitated the Mogo Park Memorial Obelisk at Same Karantaba, and launched UNESCO-funded initiative to inventory 90 intangible cultural elements in CRR North and South. The ministry plans to intensify strategic investments, heritage preservation, and inclusive policies in 2026. These will focus on upgrading the Wasu Stone Circle, the Sea Defense Works, restoration of West Coast beaches, and construction of 2 jetties to improve access to Punta Kinte Island. The sector will implement the 5-year marketing and branding strategy action plan to reach 298,042 tourist arrivals in 2026, a milestone that will move us closer to the recovery-focused NDP arrival target. Trade, Industry, Regional Integration, and Employment Ministry. This ministry is advancing industrial and diversification policy to drive structural transformation, expand manufacturing capability, and diversify exports beyond traditional commodities. This policy will align industrial incentives, regulatory reforms, and investment promotion strategies with the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, opportunities and goods markets, and the global market trends. On the regional integration matters, the ministry is working with Senegal and Guinea-Bissau to sign a trade and transit cooperation agreement. This cooperation agreement aims at facilitating trade among 3 countries for the benefits of the citizens. The 2026 budget will prioritize investments that transform strategic corridors into manufacturing and trade gateways, modernize agricultural values chains for food security and export, These include scaling up the medium, small, and medium-sized enterprise through financing, skills, and market linkages, upgrade rural markets to inclusive, climate-resilient commercial hubs, and implement policy reforms that diversify our economy and attract sustainable investment. Transport, works, and infrastructure. Honorable Speaker, the project for the rehabilitation of roads, drainage, and sewage in Banjul is now in its final stages of completion. With regard to the ongoing projects, the 50-kilometer urban roads are progressing well and most of them near completion. Similarly, significant progress has been registered in the Bani Salikenye Njabakunda Road, Brufut Madiana Banyaka, and Kunkuja Mariama roads, standing at 85% and 87% respectively. In total, 365 key priority roads in 8 lots nationwide were constructed with an overall completion rate of 70%. On the maritime subsector, the pavement of the acquired properties in Havdai have improved the waiting times for the clearing of goods and cargo from the port of Banjul from 343 hours to now 82 hours. The legal framework for the aviation sector reforms has been revised and validated. The bill establishing the various options are expected to be enacted by the National Assembly shortly. In the upcoming year, the ministry plans to scale up the implementation of phase 3 of the OIC road. These will address most of the safety deficiencies and the issues relating to the congestion of roundabouts and some of the heavily traveled intersections. The Sanyang Deep Sea Port project is expected to commence early next year. This project has the potential to attract bigger and deeper draft vessels with huge opportunities to impact on the freight charges. On the airport modernization, the ministry plans to construct an ultra-modern passenger terminal building with other related airport infrastructure. This is expected to be implemented through a public-private partnership. Honorable Speaker, the single-lane South Bank Road from Yundum at the airport to Bullock will be converted into a dual carriageway. The IDB has already provided grant funding for the feasibility study, which is at advanced stage. Work is expected to commence upon completion of the study in 2026. This will reduce the congestion on this busy segment of the road and also generate increased commercial activity along the corridor. Petroleum and Energy and Mines Ministry. To achieve universal access to electricity by 2026, the Ministry of Petroleum and Energy has completed the country's first ever 225 kilovolt transmission line linked to the OMVG network and inaugurated the first national control center through the Gambia Electricity Restoration and Modernization Project. The 23 megawatt Jambur solar plant has been commissioned, and preparations are advanced stage to commission the 150 megawatt regional solar park at Soma. The cost of electricity imports remain high despite tariff adjustments. As a result, the government undertook tariff compensation measures until a sustainable cost recovery balance is achieved. The non-renewal of the car power contract marks a decisive shift towards cheaper and more sustainable power generating alternatives, reinforcing government's commitment to energy self-sufficiency and fiscal sustainability. To enhance access to safe drinking water, NAWEC is implementing several major projects with the support of development partners to strengthen supply side. These include the separation of the water and electricity units to improve operational efficiency, expand the OGAS platform to phase 2, and add new service stations in Brusubi Annex and Yorobao, and venture into liquefied petroleum gas market for the first time. In 2026, the ministry will implement the ECOWAS fuel directives and support the establishment of a national petroleum testing laboratory. On geology, the ministry will establish a national mining policy, introduce a mining cadastral system, and amend the Mines and Quarries Act of 2005. Quarry regulations will be finalized to improve governance in the sector. Social sectors, Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education. The Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education has made significant progress in advancing equitable quality education and human capital development. In 2025, gross enrollment rates increased at all levels, with notable rises in early childhood, lower basic and senior secondary schools. The total number of schools grew from 3,839 to 4,039 between 2024 and 2025. The number of trained facilitators also increased at most levels, except for a slight decline in the lower basic category. On textbook supply and digital transition, over 1.4 million textbooks for lower and upper basic secondary schools have been procured and distributed, ensuring timely access to learning materials. At the same time, the sector is reducing reliance on printed text by introducing digital and interactive resources such as e-readers, smart boards, radio lessons, and digitalized script lessons and online platforms, broadening access to modern teaching and learning tools. For the senior secondary schools, the ministry is partnering with the Gambia's Writers Association and GPPC to now publish locally produced textbooks. Consequently, the performance in this education sector has improved, with 961 students earning credit passes in 5 or more subjects, including English and maths, where female students outperform males in these results. Additionally, 15,607 candidates achieved strong aggregate scores from aggregate 6 to 42 in 2025, up from 14,761 in 2024, marking a second consecutive year of improved high achievement and showing that over half of the Gabesi participants earn passing aggregates. The ministry plans to consolidate the gains registered in the implementation of reforms while introducing new initiatives that respond to emerging educational needs. Among them is the enhancement of the digital learning via iLearn Gambia platform and the implementation of a competency-based curriculum across schools and the expansion of early childhood education. Efforts will also focus on teacher training and welfare, school infrastructure development, inclusive education, science and technical education, strengthening. Additionally, MOPSI aims to widen the reach of school feeding programs, promote data-driven management system through one laptop per school initiative, and improve madrasa integration within the national education framework. Higher education. The ministry has made significant strides in fostering a robust and inclusive tertiary and higher education system that meets the needs of all citizens. The completion of the USED Brikama campus signifies another milestone in our efforts to broaden access to higher education quality. The modern facility will offer students a conducive learning environment, an opportunity to attain the much-needed higher education qualification in vital disciplines such as engineering. And very soon, Gambians will be graduating from engineering using home training at the USED campuses. The campus is fitted with contemporary industry standard equipment capable of producing essential tools and parts for various sectors of our economy. In collaboration with partners, the ministry awarded 1,087 scholarships to students in the technical and vocational education training, over 18 PhD and master scholarships to staff of public universities. These initiatives aim to equip students with the necessary skills and knowledge to enhancing the quality of teaching and research. The ongoing TVET decentralization process is progressing well. The Multi-Skills Center in CRR North and Agribusiness Skills Center in CRR South are expected to be operational by early next year, All the centers will have dormitories and workshops equipped with modern tools for hands-on practical experience. In addition, funding has been secured to establish 2 centers of excellence in fisheries and aquaculture that will be situated in Chujereng, and agribusiness, which will be situated in Demban, to support the development of employability skills and entrepreneurship for youths and women. The ministry plans to start the development of the School of Medicine and Allied Health Sciences at the UTG Faraba Bantan campus. The project is geared towards addressing the critical shortage of healthcare professionals in our country. Health. Ministry of Health continues to advance its mission of improving health and well-being of Gambians through various initiatives focused on governance, technology, service delivery, infrastructure, and human resource development. Key achievements include the installation of satellite internet in health facilities to improve birth registration, the digitalization of health information system, and the procurement and distribution of 61 motorcycles, 157 bicycles, and 40 new equipped ambulances with 6 supervisory pickups to bolster routine immunization. Community surveillance and patient referrals. With regard to the health infrastructure, improvements include refurbishment of key health facilities and the construction of new health centers, along the establishment of a national drug and food testing lab. Additionally, 42 state-enrolled community health nurse midwives graduated, and the National Health Insurance Scheme was rolled out. Looking ahead to 2026, the ministry intends to continue efforts to promote universal health coverage and improve service delivery. Key initiatives will focus on expanding the National Health Insurance schemes to more facilities, ensuring timely emergency medical responses with the procurement of additional ambulances, and further investment in the health infrastructure through the refurbishment of existing facilities and construction of new health posts. The ministry will also scale up training of personnel in order to streamline the service and improve the quality of health care service delivery. And for the information of the August Assembly, the RVTH Teaching Hospital is all now piped with oxygen supplies. Digital Ministry for Gender, Social Welfare. The Ministry of Gender, Children, and Social Welfare remains committed to advancing the gender equality, safeguarding the rights of the welfare of children, and empowering vulnerable populations. Consequently, the government will economically empower 1,000 women through comprehensive entrepreneurship training, benefiting 75,900 women, including women with disabilities, with a total disbursement of $82 million. These interventions have translated into increased incomes, expanded business ownership, job creation, and strengthened community-level financial independence for thousands of women. The government has allocated $3.3 million to support victims and survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. These include financial assistance to rescue, rehabilitation, and reintegration as enshrined in the Sexual Offences Act of 2013. To date, a total of 72 survivors have been supported. The plans for 2026 are to expand shelter facilities to other regions, construct a new rehabilitation center in Bansang, build stronger social service workforce, and operationalize a disability fund to support organization of persons with disabilities, enhance welfare support to vulnerable Gambians, and accelerate the establishment of a dedicated special court for gender-based violence, which is 80% complete. This is a critical step towards ensuring timely, sensitive, and survivor-centered justice for gender-based violence. Social protection. The Social Protection Agency has successfully achieved nationwide coverage of the Gambia Social Registry data collection. These will contribute in establishing a robust repository that will allow us to effectively target and provide support to those who need it most. The Gambia is the only country in sub-Saharan Africa with 100% social registry coverage. The agency, in collaboration with the Ministry of Gender, enrolled over 5,000 beneficiaries in the government cash transfer programs. Monthly cash transfers of 1,000 were provided to the most vulnerable citizens, including persons with disabilities, the elderly, the orphans, and the female-headed households, to restore dignity and ease hardships. In 2026, the plan is to consolidate the gains of the Social Protection Fund by increasing the number of beneficiaries. These will include orphans, persons with disabilities, female-headed households, and older persons. The fund also seeks to support disaster risk reduction and response, livelihood and skills development for youths to enhance social protection coordination structures. We are expected to double the number of social protection intervention next year. Youth and sports. The Ministry of Youth and Sports continue to play a critical role in the advancing of the national development by empowering young people and strengthening sports, entrepreneurship, peace building, and employability initiatives. In collaborating with partners, the ministry directly benefited 2,427 youth and women, including vulnerable groups and returning migrants. A total of 50 youths were trained on agricultural transformation and entrepreneurship. The National Youth Service Scheme recruited 200 corps members, deploying 100 out-of-school youth in entrepreneurship and apprenticeship programs, and supporting university student graduates through a new one-year paid internship program. In 2026, the ministry will prioritize completing the stadium rehabilitation, expanding mini stadia, enhancing technical training, and increasing international exposure. Plans are underway to recruit 60 new trainees, expand food processing and value addition programs, and introducing biogas production as a sustainable energy initiative. In addition, scaling aquaculture programs and commercial egg production with 3,000 layers chicks and purchasing modern vehicles and farming equipment. These interventions are expected to strengthen the agribusiness and promote youth self-reliance. Cross-cutting sectors. Ministry of Interior will continue to reform the Gambia Police Force. In this regard, a comprehensive reform agenda was launched in January 2025, and new policies are implemented, such as the Police Bill 2024, the Gambia Police Force Strategic Plan 2024 to 2028, and new police doctrines on ethics, gender mainstreaming, and public assembly policing. The Gambia Immigration Department constructed new border posts, deployed mobile teams for passport issuance domestically and abroad, and intercepted 1,343 migrants attempting irregular migration. Regarding the Prisons Department, 293 inmates graduated with vital vocational skills and advanced staff training. On drugs, the Drug Law Enforcement Agency have registered 627 drug cases in the first half of 2025, leading to a significant drop in Kush-related hospitalizations. A new drug control bill was drafted to amend the Drug Control Act and with support from ECOWAS. The construction of the Gambia's first drug treatment and rehabilitation center in Tranquil has commenced. In 2026, plans are to revamp the River Patrol Unit to combat smuggling and securing waterways. The ministry is also prioritizing the expansion of the drone surveillance unit, developing a modern centralized training academy, and establishing a police central hospital. regional clinics, and a health insurance scheme. Plans are on the way to enact the Gambia Immigration Services Bill to replace the obsolete laws decentralizing passports and ID card issuances to Sankandi and Pirang, and expanding the Migration Information and Data Analysis System, MIDAS, to more entry points. On information, Mr. Speaker, the ministry remains committed to digital transformation, media empowerment, and public accountability. It is against this backdrop the ministry conducts ministerial town hall meetings, otherwise known as Masakunda, press conferences and documentaries, weekly government updates, and engage in a nationwide campaign on misinformation and disinformation, reaching both rural and urban population. These initiatives are to enhance public knowledge and understanding of government policies, programs, and projects through proactive disclosure, interactive media, and public consultations, and popularization of government agenda. The policy and legal reforms are ongoing in the sector to align the media broadcasting policies and legislation with international best practice, promote transparency, and foster a well-informed society. Thus, the enactment of the Information and Media Broadcasting Bill and its related regulations on the access to information law. The strategic priorities in 2026 will focus on reforming the Department of Information Services and repositioning it to be a vibrant public information service provider. These will ensure that citizens are consistently informed about government activities and policies to foster a more open, accountable, and dynamic information environment. Establish a central media accreditation committee that will ensure that competent persons of high moral integrity will be providing information to the public. Justice. The government of the Gambia has established the Reparation Commission as part of efforts to implement the TRRC recommendations. This commission is mandated to administer reparations to victims of past human rights violations, advance national healing, and promote justice. The Gambia government has initiated the implementation of Special Prosecutor's Office and the Anti-Corruption Commission, both of which were established through legislative enactment by the National Assembly to address high-profile TRRC-related cases and to strengthen the fight against corruption. The recruitment of the Anti-Corruption Commission members is at the final stages, after which the appointments will be submitted to the National Assembly for approval, reaffirming government's strong commitment to operationalize the commission and ensuring credible anti-corruption commission. And for the information of the August Assembly, the National Assembly has confirmed the appointment of the 3 commissioners brought to this House. To strengthen service delivery and accountability in upcoming year, the ministry is prioritizing the introduction of a comprehensive case management system. This digital platform will address inefficiencies such as duplicated efforts and lost case files, while laying the foundation for an integrated justice system. The Ministry for Public Service Administrative Reform, Policy Coordination and Delivery, I otherwise call this ministry the Ministry of the Government. As part of the civil service reform, the ministry and partners have carried out a functional review of the MDAs to streamline and rationalize the overlapping role conflicts with a view of making government more efficient and effective. Similarly, a capacity gap assessment was conducted with relevant cadres. This is geared towards formulating competency development programs relevant to these cadres. Recently, staff audits were carried out at three of the biggest ministries, respectively, Ministry of Basic Education, Ministry of Health, and Ministry of Agriculture. This will help to keep track of the attrition rate and manage the wage bill. In 2026, There are plans to link the biometric systems to the government payroll and an executive dashboard for the executive. This will strengthen accountability and reduce absenteeism. The dashboard will offer the executive timely updates on all projects, especially the flagship ones. Ministry of Environment, Climate Change, and Wildlife. Honorable Speaker, this ministry made significant strides in enhancing the management of the country's natural resources and mitigating climate-related risks. Key achievements include successful launch of the Resilient Gambia project, which aims to promote mangrove restoration and community livelihood initiatives. The ministry also advanced the formulation of the Climate Change Act and updated the National Climate Change Policy. The review of the Gambia Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan for 2025 to 2035 was initiated with a view to aligning it with the Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. On forestry matters, the Department of Forestry increased the total protected areas dedicated to flora and fauna from 86,981 to 113,086 hectares. The focus on the community-based forestry enterprises led to the establishment of 20 new businesses utilizing non-timber forest products, fostering both ecological sustainability and economic opportunity among local communities. Looking ahead to 2026, the ministry plans to continue the momentum by implementing an updated climate change policies and further enhancing biodiversity conservation measures. Efforts will target encroachment and illegal dumping while supporting the training of local communities. With a commitment to sustainable practices, the ministry aims to strengthen environmental governance, promote biodiversity, and foster resilient livelihoods. Lands and regional government. The Ministry of Lands, Regional Government, and Religious Affairs continue to advance local land governance, institutional reforms, and digital transformation. The National Land Policy, which is a significant milestone in the country's land governance reform, is set for cabinet submission, has been duly approved. It was subsequently approved, and this policy established a comprehensive framework to guide equitable access, effective use, and sustainable management of land resources. To address the rising demand for housing, the ministry, in collaboration with stakeholders, are working on a national housing scheme that prioritizes 10,000 affordable housing for low-income civil servants. This is expected to kickstart before the end of the year. In addition, steps have been taken towards regulating a rapidly evolving real estate industry. This initiative aims to protect consumers, ensure orderly development, and enhance investor confidence in the real estate market. In 2026, the ministry plans to finalize the development of a land use plan, a land information system and digital land system, and the digitalization of land records. The land use plan seeks to promote sustainable land use by balancing urban development, agriculture, conservation, and infrastructure growth while safeguarding natural resources and building resilient communities. The ministry will also prioritize the development of a Hajj policy and regulation to ensure transparency and coordination. These will improve the welfare of Gambian pilgrims during the Hajj period. Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Speaker, will continue to undertake initiatives through diplomacy to advance the interests of the country and her citizens. The Gambia remains active internationally, especially as the chair of the OIC, to expand engagements, cooperations, and peaceful conflict resolutions. Migration is still a key priority of the government. Resultantly, the ministry hosted the first global forum on missing migrants under the Rabat process. The event brought together 120 delegates from Africa, Europe, and international organizations to address the critical issue of missing and deceased migrants. The ministry plans to expedite the implementation of the reforms in 2026. Central to the reforms is the development of a foreign service bill. These will be geared towards institutional strengthening with emphasis on capacity building and improving service conditions for foreign service officers. Data and statistics. The Gambia Bureau of Statistics continue to play a vital role in generating reliable data that will inform national planning, policy formulation, and development programs. The Bureau has successfully conducted an economic census field data collection to establish a statistical business register and develop a sample for business enterprise survey. Moreover, number of surveys were conducted. Among them is the labor force survey, which provides vital information on employment, underemployment, and informal sector dynamics. In addition, the business enterprise survey is essential to improving national accounts estimates, particularly to rebase the GDP from a base year of 2013 to 2024. Our current GDP is lagging by more than 10 years. This is recommended for every 5 years to capture key emerging sectors of the economy, thereby producing GDP figures that are reflective of the economic conditions. State-owned enterprises. The Gambia government has strengthened oversight of the functions of the state-owned enterprises through the State Enterprise Commission. With focus on performance and institutional reform, the Commission has negotiated and signed 7 performance contracts with key SOEs. This is geared towards establishing measurable targets, timelines, and responsibility mechanisms. These agreements are not merely administrative formalities, they serve as binding covenants that link operational autonomy to measurable outcomes. Through the rigorous monitoring of these contracts, the Commission is actively shifting the SOEs from a posture of inefficiency to accountability and ensuring that the public resources yield tangible return for the Gambian people. And we are pleased to inform the August Assembly, with the work of the Commission, the combined losses of the SOEs have been reduced by half. Looking ahead, the State-Owned Enterprise Commission will continue to prioritize rigorous performance contract management, transparent governance, and measurable outcomes. These will be supported by the SOE regulations and a code of conduct of good corporate governance. Mr. Speaker, we now turn our attention to medium-term macroeconomic and fiscal outlook for 2026, our GDP. The medium-term outlook remains positive with solid growth prospects. Real GDP growth is projected at 5.5% in 2026 and an average of 5.1% in the medium term. These will benefit from the acceleration of structural reforms as outlined in the NDP, growing digitalization of the economy, and besiege macroeconomic stability on account of easing inflation and exchange rate pressures. The agricultural sector is expected to sustain a robust growth momentum, building on current government and on the current government and the development partners' initiatives, such as distribution of matching grants, continued fertilizer support, and the use of high-yield crops, and enhanced groundnut price support. Livestock sector will be supported through scaling up disease management and control as well as research. Growth in this industry will be driven by the completion of ongoing construction of roads, plans to initiate new projects, and resilient remittance inflows. And retained funds are expected to be anchored in the private sector funded projects. The completion of the 225 kilovolt transmission line is expected to enhance the power purchase and sales and reduce distribution losses and increase the efficiency in the energy sector. The service sector is expected to expand, assuming a broader macroeconomic stability in 2026. Beyond stability, growth will be driven by rebuilding the modernization of tourism infrastructures, attracting both new arrivals and repeaters through destination marketing, broadening the tourism package, as well as to to carve out a niche market by the GT board. Inflation. The inflationary pressures are expected to ease in 2026 and in the medium term. This will be supported by the easing of global commodity prices, the restrictive monetary policy stance, and growth in domestic production and continued fiscal consolidation efforts by the government. The exchange rate stability is expected to be sustained in the medium term, supported by the enhanced foreign exchange policy, tourism remittances, tourism revenues, remittances, and disbursement from development partners. Fiscal outlook, revenue and grants. In the medium term, strong revenue performance will be supported by ongoing policy reforms, growing digitalization of the economy, and broader economic stability. Revenue and grants are expected to total 50.3 billion in 2026, with 32.2 billion coming from domestic sources and 18.1 from external sources. Tax revenue is anticipated to increase by 13% relative to the previous budget, amounting to 27 billion in 2020. This will be driven by digitalization of tax and custom administration following the launch of the Integrated Tax Administration System, otherwise known as ITAS, and rolling out of the ASCUDA, streamlining incentives and the implementation of reforms that will prioritize that are prioritized as in the domestic resource mobilization strategy, which targets a tax to GDP ratio of 15% by 2030. The growth in the tax revenue will be driven by various tax heads. Personal income tax is expected to benefit from enhanced enforcement, rolling out of rental income solution and tax audits, while corporate income tax is expected to improve on account of enhanced compliance among donor-funded projects. The ongoing audit of major public works contractors is expected to address long-standing loopholes in the tax compliance and underreporting. With the expected rollout of the revenue assurance solution before the end of the year, the excise telecom is projected to grow by 40% in 2026, reaching 659 million. Value-added tax is expected to grow significantly, driven by the implementation of a new electronic invoicing solution, which is aimed at improving compliance and reducing fraud. Non-tax revenue is projected at 5.2 billion, which is 2.5% of the GDP in 2026. These will be supported by the planned and ongoing efforts by the government to increase revenue collection by the agencies, higher dividend from the SOEs, and the disbursement of 1.5 billion from the Africa 50 Asset Recycling Program for the sector. 89, the emerging geopolitical tensions and shifting priorities for development partners have risen uncertainty on grants. Despite this, project grants are expected to be 14.4 billion, while budget support is expected at 3.7 billion, of which 2.5 billion is from the World Bank, 597 million from the EU, and 528 million from the African Development Bank. Expenditure. In 2026, total expenditure is expected to reach 52.4 billion, representing a nominal growth of 12% relative to the 2025 budget. This will be driven by funding of election-related expenditures, clearance of tax areas, clearance of expenditure areas, and full provisioning of subsidies. Recurrent expenditure is projected at 31.3 billion, while capital and net lending at 19.5 billion. Personal income emoluments is projected at 10.3 billion. This represents a 5% increase relative to previous budget. The increase will emanate from promotions and grade point changes. The salary increment for civil servants last year, which brought the total salary increase to 110% under the current administration has continued to improve the well-being of Gambians. Other charges will be driven by the funding of election-related activities, clearance of domestic areas, and the full provision of subsidies and electricity subsidy particularly. Capital expenditure will be composed of project grants and loan finance. The GLF funded will be relatively low. However, most of the projects, particularly roads, are now being financed through resources mobilized by the National Road Authority under the National Road Fund under the Ministry of Transport. To ensure fiscal sustainability in the medium term, the thrust of the medium-term expenditure fiscal framework, the MTEF, is expected to keep expenditure growth below that of the nominal GDP. However, the medium-term fiscal consolidation is supported by reforms on the program-based budgeting, which is a pilot from last year, rationalizing redundant agencies, prioritizing investment, and overhauling the SOEs and strengthening their management over the medium term. Budget deficit and financing. In 2026, the government targeted an overall deficit of 2.1 billion, which is 1% of the GDP. This is the lowest deficit. This lower deficit target than the previous envisaged year arises from the need to contain domestic borrowing, and it has been the lowest deficit in the last 10 years. This consolidation path strikes a balance between still high debt vulnerabilities and needed development spending. The group financing need will be met through issuing long-term debt instruments, the Resilient and Sustainability Fund on Lend Facility, rolling out short-term and concessional external debt. Public debt. To reduce debt vulnerabilities, the government will ensure debt to GDP is on a downward trend in the short to medium term. To realize this, government will continue bolstering domestic resource mobilization, strictly adhering to the agreed external borrowing plan, and ensuring that the SOEs and the PPPs do not give rise to undue fiscal risks and contingent liabilities. Resultantly, the public and publicly guaranteed debt is projected at 68.8% of the GDP in 2026 and is expected to gradually trend downwards to 58.4% by 2028. Risk to the budget. The 2026 budget is subject to downward risks, which have the potential to cause deviations. These risks may arise from global sources such as rising geopolitical and trade tensions, triggering global commodity price volatility, and the realization of these could affect macro variables that were used to anchor the budget. On the domestic front, key risks may stem from potential fiscal slippages in the run-up to the 2026 election, elevated SOE-related contingent liabilities, and the risks of rising domestic debt servicing costs, which could crowd out priority spending in the absence of robust grant support. Shifting priorities of the development partners could also affect previously supported programs on governance, health, and energy. More frequent natural disasters are threatening to damage the infrastructure and livelihood, requiring unbudgeted government interventions. On the upside, the possibility of a quicker pace of disinflation and interest rate reduction than assumed may boost demand. In addition, faster progress on reforms could boost revenue collection. Honorable Speaker, we now turn to the rationale for the 2026 budget. The rationale for the budget being discussed below is mainly on the government local funds only and is done by ministry. Ministry of Defense. The Ministry of Defense budget increased by 7% to 1.2 billion. A key driver of this is 820.9 million budgeted for wages and salaries, a 17% increase year on year. This is to partly cater for the terms and conditions of services of the armed forces. Food and food services for the Army, increased by 7% to 160 million compared to 2025. An amount of 13.7 million is also allocated to the operations and maintenance of boats for the Navy, and a further 41 million, that is a 71% increase, has been set aside for the renovation of the military barracks. Ministry of Interior, the budget increased by 24% to 2.4 billion. Approximately 68% is allocated to personnel emoluments. Goods and services account for 538 billion, a significant increase from 2025. About 50% of the food and food services budget is for the police, 47 for the prisons, and the amount of 50 million has been budgeted for the prisons to cater for the feeding of prisoners. The budget also includes 38 million for passports and ID cards and 10.5 million for the construction of police stations. A subvention of 180 million is allocated to the Drug Law Enforcement Agency to continue the fight against drugs. Ministry of Tourism and Culture, Arts and Culture. This ministry's budget increased by 9% to 59.3 million. Key areas include wages and salaries, which is 9.5 million, and buildings and structures, 6 million. About 4 million of the 6 million budgeted for buildings and structures is to support the revamping of the Jufure Island. The ministry continues to oversee the Tourism Diversification and Resilience Project. The GT Board generates revenue for the Tourism Development Levy, expected to amount to about 200 million in 2026 for additional investment in the sector. Ministry of Foreign Affairs budget increased by 8% to 2.1 billion, largely due to the 99 million increase in personnel emoluments to cater for embassy allowances. This includes 61 million for the construction of Chancery in Abuja and Dhaka. The other increases are recorded for embassy rents, that's 89 million, purchase of fuel and lubricants, 4.2 million, and water and sewage, 3.7 million, respectively. The Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs budget is 2.3 billion, which is a reduction of 5% from 2025. This decline is mainly due to decreases in subvention to non-financial institutions, public financial institutions, that is a reduction of 29%, and the maintenance of buildings facility, 82%. The budget includes 250 million for equity participation and 276 million for the public administration and modernization project. Furthermore, the budget also includes 870 million as subvention to the Gambia Revenue Authority. Ministry of Agriculture's budget is 1.8 billion, indicating a significant increase of 83% or 794.9 million. This is mainly driven by 900 million for input subsidies and organic fertilizer, which is a 77% increase, and 300 million for the capitalization of the GGs. The agriculture budget also includes 75 million for the purchase of tractors, and an additional 50 million has been budgeted for the insurance scheme for farmers under the Gamisal project. Honorable Speaker, we hereby inform the House that this has been the largest allocation to the sector based on our research. Ministry of Transport, Works and Infrastructure. The ministry's budget is 2 billion, which represents a 9% decrease. However, additional resources are available to the ministry to do the NRA levy. The 2026 budget includes 1.58 billion for roads, 215 million for land compensation, and 77 million for consultancies on road constructions. Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education's budget is 5.9 billion, which represents a 16.2 increase. Significant portions of the increase are for subventions and personnel emoluments. Other key items include school improvement grant of 352 million, WIAC fees 230 million, and school feeding 250 million. The budget also includes 46 million for the PAM and 24 million for the Gambia National Library Service Authority. Ministry of Health's budget is 3.1 billion, which is a 15% increase compared to the 2025 estimates. About 1.6 billion of this is for the subvention to hospitals, councils, and agencies. Other key items include drugs, dressings, and medical supplies of 241 million, payments to Cuban doctors 150 million, vaccines 50 million, and personnel emoluments 805 million. 50 million has been allocated for the National Health Insurance Scheme for infrastructure. 33.8 million and 22 million are budgeted for health facilities and buildings, respectively. Results-based financing is also catered for with an amount of 20 million. New additions to the Ministry of Health budget include Parato Emergency Treatment Center, 51 million, and Food and Drug Lab, 39 million. Ministry of Youth and Sports. The Ministry of Youth and Sports budget is 146 million, which is an 8.3 increase, which includes allocation of 64.7 million to subvented entities. However, this is not the only resource envelope available to this ministry. The ministry is benefiting from the sports development levy, which is expected to generate about 111 million, and a 5% on the revenue from pool betting, which is estimated to generate 5 million in 2026. In addition, the youth sector is benefiting from scholarships amounting to the tune of 103 million. Ministry of Fisheries, Water Resources. The Ministry of Fisheries, Water Resources budget is 16.6 million, a 7.2% increase. Major items include 6.8 million for fish ponds, breeding 10 million for wells, boreholes, and water points. The ministry is also a beneficiary of the Fisheries Development Levy, which is expected to generate about 70 million in 2026. Ministry of Petroleum and Energy's budget is 1.5 billion for 2026, indicating a 19.7% increase compared to the 1.3 billion for 2025. Key items include plant and machinery to the tune of 357 million, and this amount is set aside for the fast tracking of the rural electrification and energy access, and a 1 billion energy subsidy for tariff compensation to NAWEC. The budget also includes 70 million for land compensation. Honorable Speaker, the sector is still being subsidized through another $1 billion allocation in 2026 budget. Ministry of Gender, Children, and Social Welfare, the budget is 115 million, representing a 17% increase from the approved estimate of 2025. It includes 7.4 million for food and food services to support the backwater shelter and 15 million for Women Enterprise Fund. The budget also caters to support differently abled, about 4 million, and vulnerable children, 4 million, as well as support to victims of gender-based violence, 4.3 million. Independent institutions. The total appropriation for independent institutions, those are National Assembly, Judiciary, Independent Electoral Commission, and National Audit Office, combined amounts to 1.9 billion, representing an increase of 52% compared to 2025. It is worth noting that the appropriation for these institutions can only be altered or changed by the National Assembly. Debt service. In 2026, the debt service, that's repayment of interest and principal falling due in the fiscal year, is estimated to consume 31% of the budget of the GLF and 22.7% of all funds. The 2025 debt service ratios were 29.1 for GLF and 20.8 for all funds. The government debt management strategy is consistent with the debt management objectives stipulated in the Public Finance Act of 2014, which requires that the government to borrow at the lowest possible cost within the prudent degree of risk. In this regard, the government will only contract concessional loans with a grant element of nothing less than 35%. The strategy also aimed at developing a domestic debt market by lengthening the maturity profile of domestic debt and increasing the share of long-dated domestic debt instruments. Medium-term policy reforms. Honorable Speaker, to support economic stability and underpin the commitment to fiscal sustainability, the government will implement the following measures. 1, strengthen public investment through the institutionalization of medium-term public investment programs for all sectors and ensuring that all public investment pass through the Gambia Strategy Review Board selection criteria. Continue the existing use of key performance indicators to monitor and analyze state-owned enterprise corporations. Development of a travel policy for the entire public sector to ensure value for money. Development of a foreign service policy with the aim of rationalizing foreign embassies. Implementation of a domestic resource mobilization strategy that will identify and leverage on the potential sources of revenue and inform medium-term revenue reforms aimed at broadening the tax base. Restructuring and rationalization of solvented entities. Cabinet has approved the revised GAIPA Act 2015 to make it more responsive to fiscal policy and attract high-quality investment in priority sectors. The draft bill has been submitted to the National Assembly for legislative review. Its passage is expected to enhance strategic alignment of investment incentives with the national revenue and development objectives. The Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs is developing the first tax expenditure report to quantify the revenue foregone through various tax incentives and exemptions, and to provide a clear understanding of the magnitude and distribution of these incentives. The ministry will further rationalize the duty waiver process and strengthen its monitoring to minimize revenue losses. Introduce an electronic invoicing system for the VAT and other taxes aimed at addressing VAT fraud and under-declaration. Going forward, all subvented entities generating revenue must provide evidence of their revenue collection on a quarterly basis to the Ministry of Finance. Allocation for the first quarter will be provided. However, subsequent allocation must satisfy these requirements in order to be subvented. Cabinet has approved the transformation of the Social Development Fund into the Development Bank of the Gambia. The objective of this development bank is to provide access to finance at affordable rates for youth, women, farmers, and entrepreneurs. This will provide funding opportunities for economic development. Revenue Administration, Honorable Speaker, this year marks the beginning of the implementation of the GRA's Corporate Strategic Plan 2025 to 2029. The objective of which is to drive digital transformation across the Revenue Authority, enhance revenue mobilization, trade facilitation through the adoption of disruptive technologies, streamlined processes, and effective stakeholder engagement. The transformation program will focus on process re-engineering, automating operations, fostering a culture of innovation through change management, and ensuring necessary legislative reforms to support a modern and efficient tax administration. On the implementation of reforms, the launch of the Escuda World system has improved international trade revenue significantly. For instance, the revenue collected by the Custom and Excise Department grew by 85% between 2022 and 2024. The SIGPA project, which is in 3 phases, namely the digital tax stamp for excise-able goods, fuel marking solution for refined or fuel, and revenue assurance for telecom services and fintech. In the National Single Window Project, rental compliance system, and digital excise stamp, domestic revenue mobilization efficiency. Furthermore, consideration is underway to adapt a platform to implement administrative measures. All SIC and EPZL hold the Income and Value Added Tax Act of 2012. The Commissioner General of the GRA is mandated to the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, the GRA, and the project implementation units will jointly develop a framework to provide clear guidance and procedures for implementing and managing mandatory filing of financial accounts for corporate income tax. In the same vein, the pay-as-you-earn must be accompanied with a payroll schedule before payment to GRA. Proposed revenue measures for 2026. Honorable Speaker, to implement the revenue administration, the following measures will be implemented. 1. In line with our commitment under both the WHO and ECOWAS Convention frameworks on tobacco control, the tobacco control levy on cigarettes, cigars, and cigar rolls will be increased from $2 per kilo to $3 per kilo. Tax rate on winnings from betting, gaming, lottery, and gambling will be increased from 40% to 50% of the winnings to reinforce the fight against the menace posed by gambling and betting in society. Government will also introduce a digital platform to enhance the revenue assurance of the gaming sector. Government will implement a carbon-based excise duty on fuel products to replace the existing ad valorem excise on the fuel price structure, which is in line with the commitment to combat climate change and promote energy transition efforts. See Annex attached to this schedule 7. An annual social protection levy will be introduced, applicable to all motor vehicles, motorbikes, and tricycles. This is aimed at providing financing sources for government social protection programs. In order to promote menstrual health and hygiene for women and girls, the government will eliminate import duty and VAT on the imported sanitary pads. This measure is aimed at addressing both economic and health disparities related to menstrual hygiene for schoolgirls and by improving access to sanitary pads and lower retail prices. Measures will be taken to assess the implementation of this reform in subsequent years. Given the low level of compliance in annual lease rental payments, Ministry of Finance, in collaboration with Ministry of Lands, Regional Integration, Regional Government, and Religious Affairs, will fully enforce the provision of the State Land Act of 1991. To this end, effective January 1st, 2026, all land lease documents used as collateral in the commercial banks or other financial institutions shall be deemed to be null and void if the annual land lease rental payments are not fulfilled. Therefore, all commercial banks and other financial institutions holding these land documents as collateral are required to ensure that annual land lease rental payments are fully paid, failure of which the minister responsible for lands and regional governments and religious affairs will nullify the lease. Conclusion. Honorable Speaker, in conclusion, the Gambia government's economy has gained momentum, despite the increased fragmentation and protectionism in the global world. This has led to a slow global growth projection in 2026. On the domestic front, the envisaged broader macroeconomic stability, acceleration of structural reforms outlined in the NDP, and the strategic investment in key sectors of the economy, such as agriculture, health, education, will anchor growth in 2026. The targeted fiscal deficit in 2026 is 0.3% for GLF and 1% for all funds. The 1% is the lowest in the last decade. This is meant to strengthen our fiscal consolidation efforts and reduce debt vulnerabilities. And this consolidation path strikes a delicate balance between still high debt vulnerabilities and the broader goal of inclusive growth and poverty alleviation. The government will continue to pursue domestic resource mobilization reforms to reduce debt vulnerabilities and build fiscal resilience. This will be supported by plans to implement the first domestic resource mobilization strategy starting in 2026. The strategy will facilitate domestic revenue policy implementation through a coordinated approach, guide medium-term revenue policy, and deepen efforts to broaden the tax base. Efforts will also be made to mitigate the impact of contingent liabilities emerging from state-owned enterprises and the PPP transactions. The government remains steadfast in its commitment to fiscal discipline and strategic allocation of public resources. Resultantly, a mandatory baseline reporting costing of all MDAs will be introduced in 2026. This will enable sectors to estimate the minimum cost required to maintain existing programs and services at their current levels, excluding new initiatives or capital projects, unless previously approved. In addition, it will provide a realistic foundation for the budget and help control expenditure growth. The government is compiling a comprehensive and confirmed areas list. Strategies will be put in place to address the issue of areas. The objective is to start the liquidation process in 2026 and is expected to continue in the medium term. To ensure inclusive development, the government has over the years adopted an innovative financing measures to reduce rural and urban disparity. This is demonstrated by the ongoing and new infrastructure projects launched by His Excellency the President. These were aimed at not only transforming rural Gambia, but to catalyze economic growth and improve the livelihood of our people. The commitment demonstrated under this administration is to give every Gambian hope to resolve outstanding challenges as we look ahead to 2026. I would like to use this opportunity to thank all our development partners who have supported the Gambia over the years. In this regard, I extend our deepest gratitude to the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, European Union, the African Development Bank, Islamic Development Bank Group, UN agencies, the African Union, OPEC Fund for International Development, Arab Bank for Economic Development, GIZ, IFAD, ECOWAS, and the MRC Foundation, the Commonwealth, the Red Cross, civil society organization, the Kingdoms of Saudi Arabia and Saudi Fund for Development, Kingdom of Morocco, Turkey, State of Kuwait and the Kuwaiti Fund, Russia, the People's Republic of China, Economic Development, African Development Fund, ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, European Investment Bank, Export-Import Bank of India, International Development Association Agency, Agence Française de Développement, Commission of European Union, the KfW, Africa Risk Capacity Group, Global Environmental Facility, Green Climate Fund, Global Fund, and Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization. I would also like to thank His Excellency the President, Adama Barrow, for his visionary leadership and transformative initiatives to build a Gambia that works for all. I want to express my gratitude to my cabinet colleagues and the hard-working staff at the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs. I'm equally thankful to this August Assembly and the staff of the National Assembly under the leadership of the Speaker and the Clerk for working tirelessly to approve the 2026 budget estimate. With the continued determination, I am hopeful that we will continue to move this country on a path of poverty reduction and sustained economic growth and prosperity, which will be inclusive and impactful on the life of every Gambian. On that note, Honorable Speaker, I beg to move. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, any seconder? Honorable member for Lower Flood West.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I rise to second the motion, but I also want to seize this opportunity to raise my concern. It's very sad. This is a very important event, that is the budget speech. We are not seeing our colleagues, that is the UDP National Assembly members. They are boycotting this event because somebody, a legal Illuminati, have made statements that are very touching and scary for this nation. And we members of parliament are to come and serve the interests of the people, but unfortunately, this does not happen. And this is a clear testimony, and the world should watch. The tables are empty. And Speaker, if you go to our standing order, you made a ruling to say that there would be a budget speech and urging all members to come. And they defined that ruling. And going back to our constitution also, in section 112, it talked about members. We must be ready to serve the interests of our people. And this budget speech is one of the most important elements in our democratic process. And today, it is all of us. Nobody is above the law. Everybody seated here and outside, nobody is above the law. For somebody to be called for questionings warrant you to deviate from the job that you are entitled to do. This is a national event that is above personal interest, is above an individual matter. Mr. Speaker.
Point of order, Honorable Speaker.
Okay.
Yeah. Honorable Speaker, I'm rising on order 29.1. 29.1, every member shall restrict his or her observation to the subject under discussion. And the subject under discussion is the appropriation bill.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Member for Serekunda. Honorable Member for Serekunda, the budget is being tabled before Parliament. It affects and concerns Parliament. And if there are parliamentarians who, for whatever reasons, are not in, members have a right to talk about it as part of the budget. All what I want to say to the honorable members is that, honorable members, parliamentarians are accountable to their people. They are not accountable to any other institution. Parliamentarians have a right to come into Parliament and go away. Parliamentarians also can stay away from Parliament and do their own business. There are a number of times, if you are absent, that Parliament can discipline. What Parliament's responsibility is to inform those who they are representing that this representative is either not coming to Parliament regularly or whatever. We can do that. But otherwise, hardly can we do anything except if you are in breach of the standing orders. Are you ready? Give it. No. Please, honorable member for Lower Fuladu, are you ready? Huh? If you are not ready, then take up.
Speaker, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, honorable member for Lower Fuladu. Honorable members, pursuant to Order 87.4 of the Standing Orders of the National Assembly, I will adjourn the debate on the Appropriation Bill 2026 until Monday, 8 December 2025, to enable members to study the bill. Honorable members, can we get your, please? Honorable, please. The back line over there. Honorable members, I urge you to approach this critical matter with diligence, commitment, and a spirit of cooperation. The debate and scrutiny of the bill must reflect our shared commitment to upholding the interests of the nation, ensuring transparency, and addressing the needs of every citizen. As the Honorable Minister for Finance and Economic Affairs presents this bill, I call upon all members to remain guided by the principles of integrity, inclusivity, and equity as we deliberate on the appropriations for the next fiscal year. The decisions we make will have a profound impact on our country's economic growth, social development, and the well-being of our citizens. Honorable members, before adjourning this assembly, the 2026 appropriation bill as required of him by the Constitution. Honorable Minister, thank you very much. The Honorable Minister did set out government's physical and economic development plans and programs for the fiscal year 2026. On that note, honorable members, I also wish to take this opportunity on behalf of both sides of the Assembly, and indeed on my own behalf, to extend our thanks and appreciation to the following distinguished guests and invitees for gracing this important sitting of the National Assembly. His Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic, my Lord, the Chief Justice, Honorable Cabinet Ministers, members of the Diplomatic and Consular Corps, permanent secretaries and heads of institutions here in present, staff of the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, senior government officials here in present, our service chiefs here in present, religious leaders, members of the press, and all other invited guests and the general public. On that note, honorable members, I now put the question. Be resolved that this August Assembly do stand adjourned until Monday, 8 December 2025 at 10 a.m. Those in favor, please say aye. Those not in favor, please say no. The ayes have it. This Assembly now stands adjourned until Monday, 8 December 2025 at 10 a.m. prompt for the debate and consideration of the Appropriation Bill 2026. Thank you.